The loss of culture, the grieving for the land, that was as a result of this residential school.
Tonight, Métis in Saskatchewan launch a lawsuit for the residential schools experience.
We've structured this settlement so that when the court approves it, the funds will flow almost immediately into the trust mechanism that has been put together.
Minister Mark Miller takes questions about a big settlement while attending this year's Liberal cabinet retreat.
Those clients end up going to facilities either in Alberta, British Columbia, sometimes Ontario.
And the opioid epidemic hits the N.W.T, and there are few resources to treat it. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. We begin in northwest Saskatchewan, where survivors of the Île-à-Crosse residential school have launched a class action lawsuit against the provincial and federal governments. It comes as the numbers of survivors drop almost daily. The survivors group and supporters turned out in force, though as the court filing was announced for a proposed class action lawsuit, they're seeking compensation for the harms done at the school, where approximately 1,500 children, mainly Métis, attended. The Métis Nation Saskatchewan is backing the group, saying for too long, the truth of the residential school experience of Métis survivors has been ignored, and survivors denied benefits from other settlements.
The Île-à-Crosse residential school is one of the oldest schools in Canada. So when you think about that and you put it into context, over 100 years and 6 to 7 generations of harm in that school. And it didn't just affect Île-à-Crosse. It affected all of the surrounding communities in northwest Saskatchewan. You see this.
The survivors group hopes the action spurs both levels of government to come to the table to work out a compensation package. Failing that, it says the case will go to court. The MNS says its support includes financial backing for a lawsuit, but didn't give a dollar figure. Meanwhile, the Saskatchewan government said in an emailed statement it couldn't comment as the matter is before the court. To the Yukon now, where a man has been sentenced for sexually assaulting 4 Indigenous girls. Our Whitehorse reporter Sarah Connors has details of that sentencing and a warning to viewers, some may find this story disturbing.
53-year-old Graham Howard Tracy will serve 5 years in a federal prison for a series of offenses he committed in a Yukon community between August 7th, 2018 and August 7th, 2021. APTN cannot reveal more information as a publication ban is in place. Last year, Tracy pled guilty to 3 counts of touching a person under the age of 16 for a sexual purpose. Judge Karen Ruddy noted aggravating factors in the sentencing include the fact the girls were particularly vulnerable because of their age, sex, and Indigenous ancestry. Tracy requested to serve his sentence in a prison outside of the Yukon in order to receive intensive therapeutic treatment. He is subject to a number of conditions, including registering as a sex offender for 20 years. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Still in the north, the town of Hay River, Northwest Territories, has been experiencing devastating opioid-related deaths. With a population of roughly 2,400, Hay River is known as the hub of the north. It's located in the south end of the territory, connected by a road close to the Alberta border. Health officials are dealing with a surge in carfentanil and fentanyl detected in street drugs. In 2022, 6 people died of opioid poisoning and crack cocaine, double from the previous year, all of whom were in Hay River. Another cause for alarm, all who died were alone and without a naloxone kit, a life-saving opioid antidote. In a press conference held today, N.W.T health officials say they are focused on harm reduction. The N.W.T does not currently have rehabilitative treatment services. Monica Pereira's director of the Child, Family and Community Wellness says that it's something there is an appetite for.
We are not offering currently any treatment in the territories for people seeking rehabilitative services. So there's an application process for that rolls out. It takes a little bit of time and is somewhat involved. And those clients end up going to facilities either in Alberta, British Columbia, sometimes Ontario. And then our job when they come back is to do our best to provide aftercare services.
The opioid crisis is touching people right across the country. We'd like to hear your story. Here's how you can continue the conversation. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. The Trudeau government is holding its cabinet retreat in Hamilton this week. And with the post-pandemic economy beginning to slow, the meeting appears to be all about reducing expectations. But in terms of Indigenous spending priorities, Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Mark Miller says it is business as usual. APTN's Fraser Needham has more.
Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance Chrystia Freeland says Canadians should be prepared for some tough financial times ahead.
That there is still a lot of uncertainty in the world economy, and that means that we do need to continue to take a fiscally prudent approach. We still do not know for sure how the plane is going to land. We do not know for sure how the COVID recession is going to finally play out.
But Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Mark Miller told APTN News the government plans to make good on its fiscal promises to Indigenous people in the year ahead.
Essentially maintaining the momentum, making sure we're paying those bills that have been accumulating over the last 150 years, and closing the socioeconomic gaps which are unacceptable in this country and continue to be so. So a wide range of elements that do touch what's generally described in short form as reconciliation.
And this includes distributing $2.8 billion promised as part of the Godfried Band class settlement announced this past weekend.
This is a pretty innovative structure where a trust will be formed. They'll be administered not by the Government of Canada, but by Indigenous peoples themselves. So we've structured this settlement so that when the court approves it, the funds will flow almost immediately into the trust mechanism that has been put together.
The Liberals' Hamilton cabinet retreat winds up on Wednesday. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Thanks, Fraser. Time to step aside for a quick break. Still to come, Quebec's largest trade union has a trailblazing new leader.
Je suis fier de mon village, je suis fier de ma famille, puis également fier, je vous dirais, d'être dans une fonction comme celle-là qui peut-être pourra influencer.
Welcome back. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre was in Vancouver today to meet with First Nations chiefs. He wants to start consultations that he believes could have big impacts for Indigenous peoples. APTN's Tina House has more.
Over a dozen chiefs and members of parliament gathered to hear from the official opposition leader, Pierre Poilievre, at the annual AME Roundup Mining Conference in Vancouver. They are here to see how the Conservatives are going to propose moving resource sharing forward.
I'm running for Prime Minister to put people back in charge of their lives. That includes First Nations. Conservatives believe in less power for the federal government and more power for the First Nations. First Nations should have the right to bring home more of the benefits of their resources to their people. And so today, I'm kicking off consultations with First Nations and industry on an optional new model for First Nations that they could opt into, giving them more direct fiscal revenues from resource projects on their lands.
Grand Chief Michael Laborde says he, along with the Chief of Kamloops, first developed a plan called the Resource Revenue Charge, which would give First Nations a revenue stream from resource projects back in 2013. And he's glad the Conservatives are finally pledging their support.
They were asking questions, how do we see this working? We want it to be optional. We don't want people to think that this is Ottawa's idea of a solution. This is our idea of a solution. This is our idea of a solution to an Ottawa problem, right? And so what the feds are going to do is they're going to cede some of their space, their tax room, and then the First Nations will occupy that space as the way it should have been, 150 years ago. And so we're excited to see that come to fruition, and we're excited to be a part of it.
Chief Judy Desjardins of the Blueberry River First Nations says there is no reason why many First Nations should still be living in third world conditions in one of the wealthiest countries in the world.
Like I said in there, it's the 20th century and we're still facing water problems within our community, but we have billions being extracted out of our territory, and this is, we should be driving on paved roads. We're not. We should have, homes that are not filled with mold or water damage. And, I hope to bring better quality of life in terms of, new infrastructure and expanding in that infrastructure so that we have, our community and members can live comfortably.
If elected, the Conservatives hope to enact the Resource Revenue Charge to start benefiting First Nations immediately. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
In what is seen as another push towards inclusion, Quebec's largest union of trade workers recently appointed its first woman and first Indigenous person as its new president. The FTQ union represents over 600,000 workers in Quebec in industries like construction, healthcare, and transportation. Its new president, Magali Picard, hails from the Huron-Wendat community of Wendake, just outside Quebec City. Picard told APTN's Nouvelle Nationale she hopes to bring a new excitement to the role.
Je suis fière de mon village, je suis fière de ma famille, puis également fière, je vous dirais, d'être dans une fonction comme celle-là qui peut-être pourra influencer d'autres Wendat à s'impliquer au niveau de leur syndicat ou encore de n'importe quelle association communautaire. Donc, souhaitons que ça puisse peut-être inspirer d'autres personnes.
And they're calling it the first Indigenous-owned investment firm in Canada. Chief Alvin Francis of the Nequinit First Nation in Saskatchewan announced the partnership with Meckleborg Financial Group. They are forming the Weo-Tisiwin Investment Management Company. Chief Francis says the funds First Nations have in trust are not growing fast enough to make money. This new company will help build wealth for First Nations people across Canada. He's also hoping more band councils join the group.
Find a way that the growth can happen with the trust that we all have. They've got to grow to keep up with the inflation, and it never was. It never has. So we had to uniquely find a way, partners, to give us that, I guess, out of the box thinking of where we need to be with this. because 2 to 5%, 3%, that doesn't cover anything.
The Arctic Winter Games are fast approaching. The sports and athletes will no doubt have the attention of many attending the games. But away from the action, there will be exhibits on display for the public to educate themselves on residential schools and missing, murdered, and exploited Indigenous people. Jess Croucher is an Indigenous arts curator and has assisted in creating these exhibits. She joins us now. Jess, great to have you with us. While a lot of people are obviously looking forward to the sporting side of the games, there are also some important exhibits that will be showcased as well. Can you tell us a bit about those?
Yeah, absolutely. So the exhibits are a response to the long-standing tradition of pin trading at the Arctic Winter Games. So Eden Boulier, Allison Platt requested that we host some culturally rich creative activities for pin collectors to earn their pins. So our work is primarily centered on Indigenous art and activism, so it only made sense to go down that path. We have one exhibit which is from the Legacy of Hope Foundation called Generations Lost, Healing the Legacy of Residential Schools. It's an interactive exhibit that shares a 100-year timeline on the creation and implementation of residential school system in Canada, as well as steps towards healing and our historical resilience as Indigenous peoples. And the second exhibit we're hosting is an art gallery called Honor and Remember for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit Plus peoples, and missing, murdered, and exploited Indigenous peoples. So this exhibit will hold artworks, paintings, beadwork, soapstone carvings, some really beautiful memorial pieces from our local people to tell our stories around this issue.
Jess, why do you think exhibits like this are important to have on display at the Arctic Winter Games?
Well, we're going to have over 2,000 visitors to our region. So we have a very rich history here. We're in the traditional territory of the Cree Dene and Métis. We have 12 nations in our region, so it's just an opportunity to share our people's stories and to have a further reach and a further impact. Healing happens when our stories are told and when they're believed. So storytelling, it's not just those legends, it's not just storybooks, it's our teachings. It challenges our critical thinking, it's our identity, so it's a great way to heal and to learn. So.
Yeah, I mentioned the pin trading. We usually do a story on that each games, which I really love that whole aspect of this as well. There's going to be some creative activities people can take part in to obtain special pins. Can you tell us the idea behind that?
Yeah, so the primary goal is for sure impact through education. So attendees will be welcome to explore those exhibits. For the orange shirt pin, they'll be welcome to explore the Generations Lost exhibit by Legacy of Hope. We will be doing an activity that involves being taught how to make a braid with an elder, and then they'll receive their pin. For the red dress pin, they will be as well participating in the exhibit and then creating a patch that will be later sewn by a group of elders into a much larger red dress. And we're hoping to have that tour around our region after the games.
Great stuff, Jess. We'll have to leave it there, but I appreciate you speaking with us about this all today.
Thank you very much.
And the Arctic Winter Games kick off in just 4 days. Time for one more quick break, but when we come back, we'll tell you about an Indigenous-owned firm being recognized in Rideau Hall. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. This local fox of Petrie Island near Ottawa, Ontario, was seen by our friend Greg Scriver. Greg tells us the fox was going from fishing hole to fishing hole, looking for a drink and any scraps may be left behind. Thanks as always, Greg. If you have a great photo, send it to us by email to share@aptn.ca. Time now to take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, +2 with flurries in Halifax, -6 and snow in Charlottetown. -26 with snow for Kuujjuaq, 10 below and snow in Nain. -7 with flurries in Montreal, 7 below in Val-d'Or. -2 with snow in Sault Ste. Marie, 3 below and snow in North Bay. -9 in Thunder Bay, 12 below in Sioux Lookout. -28 under sunny skies in Churchill, 16 below with snow in God's Lake. -13 in Winnipeg, snow and -6 in Dauphin. -3 for Regina with snow, 8 below and snow in Saskatoon. -9 in La Ronge, 17 below for Uranium City. -10 in Fort Chip, 3 below with snow in Fort McMurray. +4 with snow for Edmonton, flurries and 0 in Lethbridge. +7 with showers in Vancouver, 4 above in Kamloops. Cloudy and +6 in Prince George, +3 for Smithers. -20 with snow in Old Crow, +7 in Whitehorse. -16 with snow in Yellowknife, 21 below in Norman Wells. -29 in Sax Harbor, 22 below with snow in Paulatuck. -34 in Chesterfield, 35 below in Whale Cove, 30 below in Resolute, -33 in Joe Haven. Back to Ottawa now, where Governor General Mary Simon handed out medals to architects today. The awards are for outstanding architecture and landscape projects. And an Indigenous-owned firm was one of 13 projects getting recognition. The medals were handed out at Rideau Hall. One of them went to Formline Architecture for its design of the Residential School History and Dialogue Centre at the University of British Columbia. The centre was built to address the colonial legacy of residential schools and other policies imposed on Indigenous peoples by the Canadian government. It's the first Indigenous-owned architecture firm to be awarded. Simon said architecture has a role to play in reconciliation by incorporating Indigenous knowledge, design, techniques, and culture into buildings. Hip-hop artist MC Sly Skeeta is our guest on an all-new episode of Face to Face tonight, right after the news. Skeeta was born Saul Ibrahim, the son of an Anishinaabe mother and a father who was a child soldier in Eritrea before moving to Canada. Growing up, Ibrahim says he battled poverty and homelessness.
I had to learn the hard way, and I think people could definitely have that experience go the wrong way in terms of, you could be a drug addict, you could be in jail, you could possibly even end up dead. But I'm a spiritual person, and I totally believe that, that Creator was looking out for me, and that I was able to get through that. And one of that ways was music.
You can catch that entire interview with MC Sly Skeeta in a little more than 2 minutes' time. Plus, don't forget to tune in tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for In Focus with host Daryl Stranger. They're taking a look at what can be done to ensure that Indigenous peoples are fairly represented in the film and television industry. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Tuesday. Of course, for news anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Stick around for Face to Face. That's next. Have a great night.